You join us for round 11 of the 2008 season at a circuit known as Monaco without the houses, the Dust Bowl. The Hungaroring is where we're at. On go the lights. On the right is pole sitter Jenson Button. On the left, second on the grid is Fernando Alonso. 5 lights are on, and the pause before the 5 lights go out. And that was a terrible start for pole sitter Jenson Button, because Mark Webber from third on the grid, look at him, he's trying to split Alonso and Button. Going into the first corner, Button's already down to third, but Alonso, the inside, he's going to try and take the lead in the Super Gurry around the first corner, and he's done it. Fernando Alonso takes the lead of the race, Mark Webber second, Sato third, Jenson Button from pole position down to fourth. There's contact at the back. I saw some debris being dislodged from somewhere and someone. Difficult to tell who that was, but we'll find out. There's some cars toiling at the back at turn 3. One could have been a BMW Sauber. Well, there's Montoya up in 11th place. He'd started 10th on the grid, but has lost one position. So that's not good news for him, but into the chicane. And we switch to Alonso, going through the middle sector, full of lefts, rights, and more lefts and rights. And look at this, Lewis Hamilton running in last and missing bits of the front wing. So that contact involved Lewis Hamilton and Matthias Lauda without a rear wing. So, yeah, it looks as if those two have had contact with each other. And Hamilton also missing a rear wing by the looks of it. So, definitely 3 cars having a collision going into turn number 2. Right now we're at the final corner, and Fernando Alonso in the Super Aguri leads. And on board with Mark Webber second. Behind is Takuma Sato third. Here comes Jenson Button trying to recover his lost ground from pole position. And we got 5th place, it's Kimi Raikkonen at the moment. He'd started... No, it's Felipe Massa 5th and Kimi Raikkonen 6th. So Massa losing a position to the flying Takuma Sato, because he'd made the best start from 5th on the grid up to 3rd. And where he is in the championship, he needs that, because Jenson Button has kind of stolen a bit of a march off the track. Briefly goes Christian Albers, and round the outside of him is the Renault of Robert Kubica. So Christian Albers making a bit of a mistake from 7th, and Kubica qualifying very well in the Renault this time around. Normally the Renaults have pretty poor qualifying, but here at the Hungaroring they have made some good leaps forward. I shall tell you where they qualified. They were 8th and 11th, so decent effort from the 2 Renaults. Not so good, the 2 Ferraris. They were qualified way down in 20th and 21st. They're having a terrible season, if I'm being completely honest. Glock had qualified 4th at the previous round in Estoril, and well, he didn't finish. It was down to a mechanical issue. His teammate was even less lucky than that, because Montoya crashed out at the exit of the first corner and took 3 cars with him. They included Sergio Perez, Sebastian Vettel and Adrian Sutil. I'm just looking at the timing screens. Daniel Ricciardo has moved up into 8th place past Robert Kubica. So Kubica, far from gaining a place on Christian Albers, has in fact lost one somewhere. And you can see just above the timing ticker as off the track goes Sebastian Vettel, the other Red Bull. Is he going to rejoin okay? Yes, he's rejoined okay, not unsafely. And he's dropped a few positions down to 16th place. So difficult opening phase of the race for Red Bull. Hamilton did get a point last time out at Estoril, the last of the runners actually, in 10th place, but Hamilton really wasn't on the pace at all in Estoril. And of course Vettel got caught up in that pile-up. Happened on lap 7. Round in the final corner, and Fernando Alonso is edging away from Mark Webber. This Super Aguri has really come on strong going into Estoril. Makes me wonder how many of their upgrade tokens they used in between, when was it? It was the European Grand Prix at Donington and the Estoril Portuguese Grand Prix. That was Jenson Button having a look at Sato going into the first corner, but not making that one stick, as De Resta locking up and going way, way wide. Luckily for him, there's a lot of tarmac around the outside. Now, I think there might well be a bit of an argument over how many laps there's supposed to be in this race, because it looks as if we're using the shorter variant of the Hungaroring Prix 2002, but we've only got 70 laps, which would indicate that, well, the 70 laps would have been on the newer variant of Hungaroring, and the old version would have been 77, so slightly shortened race this time around at Hungaroring, but we got 70 laps on the older variant coming up for you. on board with Nick Heidfeld, and he went off the track there briefly. That was going through turn number, which one is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That was 9, and now we're in turn 11. Now through the very fast and difficult turn 12 into a slightly open hairpin of turn 13 before 180 degrees right to end the lap. And Alonso is 180 degrees to begin the lap, and off the track goes Jenson Button. He's made the mistake, he tried to brake late going into the first corner and still struggling off the track, and through goes Felipe Massa up into 4th place, so Jenson losing out quite badly there. Daniel Ricciardo has also gained a position on Christian Albers for 7th place. Makes me wonder how much upgrade tokens the Toro Rosso used going up to the Portuguese Grand Prix, because Daniel Ricciardo qualified very well at Estoril, but had that massive shunt shortly after his first pit stop, and off the track again goes Paul Di Resta. Now we're getting some evidence that the Hungaroring is a little bit slippery this afternoon, because Di Resta has gone off twice, Jenson has gone off at least once, and Nick Heidfeld has also gone off at least once. And there's another driver as well, it was Christian Albers. So 5 laps in, and we've had at least 5 offs. Plus an incident on the first lap involving probably at least 3 drivers, but 2 of them got away with damage. And look at Daniel Ricciardo, having overtaken Albers, he's now caught up to Kimi Raikkonen for 6th place. So Kimi Raikkonen and McLaren did use some of their upgrade tokens, and it was tyre related going into the Portuguese Grand Prix, but so far it hasn't really worked out too well, and I think Ricciardo's overtaken him for 6th place. Jenson Button also making a move on Felipe Massa to regain that 4th place. And, off the track is Toyota, is that Jenson? I think it's Jenson Button out of the race immediately after overtaking Felipe Massa. He's pulled off with a mechanical issue. So, Jenson Button, championship leader, out of the race. And that could throw the World Championship wide open if Sato and Raikkonen get their act together, but at the moment, Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso are ahead of them both, at least. But there you can see Jenson Button off the track and out of the race. So what has happened with the Toyota? We'll find out shortly as he gets wheeled away into safety. Loose wheels, so nuts come loose somewhere, and it's obviously damaged the hub. So Jenson becomes the first retirement of the race. Amazingly, it seems, as off the track goes Hülkenberg, but luckily for him there is tarmac on the outside, so he can rescue that. BMW Sauber having a shocking time at the moment. No points in the last 4 races. And it seems as if both drivers are to blame for some of that, because Montoya's crashed out of some of them. At least 2 of them, possibly a 3rd. Yeah, definitely a 3rd in the past 4 races. And Hülkenberg has had his fair share of off-track moments as well, particularly Austria. That was a pretty wretched weekend for him. And Hülkenberg did qualify last on the grid as well, so yeah, tricky time at the moment for BMW Sauber. Kimi Raikkonen's just lost another position, this time to Christian Albers. So something a bit wrong with that McLaren at the moment. Ever since, well, the previous round at Estoril's not really worked. Well, we're getting a clue as to why Kimi is having a bit of trouble, because he doesn't look particularly quick through the mid-sector. Now he's got an absolute train of cars behind him, 2 Renaults of Kubica and Barrichello. One of them, I think, just went off, actually. And Barrichello losing a position to Montoya. That's 9th place. And Kimi Raikkonen going through 13. But that wasn't a particularly good line for him. So, on board with Martin Webber, who's about to go into the first corner. In 2nd position, 2.4 seconds behind. And Ricciardo's making a move on Massa for 4th place. Look at this, the rejuvenated Toro Rosso. And where did Ricciardo actually qualify? I don't think I finished that thought. It was 8th in Portugal and 9th at Hungary. Kimi Raikkonen losing a position to Robert Kubica for 7th place now. So yeah, he's definitely struggling at the moment. And, well, it seems as if the McLaren may not have developed the car completely. So, let me just double check how much upgrade tokens... Well, we'll undisclose that. They haven't used that many, actually. So, yeah, it could be that at this halfway point of the season, lots of teams have used more upgrade tokens than McLaren. That's a hypothesis. as Sebastian Vettel goes a bit wide through turn number 9, now into 10 and 11. This is the faster stuff now. No such problems through 11, now 12. It's a tricky corner, but no problems there. Much more fun variant of Hungaroring, this one. The other one that does tend to produce slightly better racing, because the longest straight, the main straight, is not long at all. Very much a go-kart style circuit, this one. And what have we got here? Montoya. Is this versus Kimi Raikkonen into the first corner? Well, he's going through one of the corners here. Is it a long left? It's a long left, so it must be turn 2. But yeah, Kimi Raikkonen under pressure from Montoya. And similarly, Felipe Massa under pressure from Ricciardo goes off at turn number 4 and loses that 4th position to the Toro Rosso. Haven't said that too often this season. Toro Rosso are last in the championship. And we got Massa versus Christian Albers for 5th place now, going through the chicane, now through 8 and 9. And how long will it be before Felipe Massa makes an overtake? As Mark Webber goes through into turn number 13, long left before a longer right that signifies the final corner of this Hungaroring circuit. But still, Fernando Alonso continues to lead, and he continues to edge out the gap between himself and Mark Webber. Kimi Raikkonen locking up. He's not happy in that McLaren. And you'd have thought that the upgrade that they used was on tyres would have given them a bit more of an advantage on this type of circuit, but obviously Kimi Raikkonen not very happy. He has chosen these soft tyres, as have the BMW Sauber team. I was expecting quite a lot of soft runners for this one, being as it is quite a technical circuit, full of corner after corner. A circuit I actually do enjoy. It is quite fun to look at and drive on in video games. So I have no problem with this one. Through the twisty middle sector goes Mark Webber. Now through 9. It is pretty much a 90-degree right, but it is fairly quick and you don't really use much of the brakes going through there. Oh, is that Felipe Massa under pressure from Christian Albers exiting the chicane? It was, but now Albers has been slowed up and Robert Kubica is going to have a look going through the middle sector, but Kubica lost a bit of time as well. I wonder if he got delayed by the delayed himself, Christian Albers. And look in the background, where is Kimi Raikkonen? He is not happy. He's down in 8th place, struggling with his car. Oh, goodness me, Vettel with no front wing. Where has that happened? And another driver with no front wing. It's a Williams. And which one is it? Is it Heidfeld or is it Bianchi? So those two have had a... They may have had a coming together, but it's quite unusual to see both front ends gone. So I wonder if Sebastian Vettel or the Williams behind, if it is Nick Heidfeld, because I think Heidfeld was running in front of Vettel at that point, may have had a spin going out of one of the corners and then was just collected by Sebastian Vettel. And Kimi Raikkonen coming into the pits, was that? Yeah, he is coming into the pits. So, now that is quite unusual. Was it Kimi Raikkonen that made a mistake and was therefore collected by the Red Bull and the Williams? Well. So Kimi Raikkonen's race going from bad to worse, and Felipe Massa's lost 5th place to Christian Albers somewhere. And it was going through the middle sector, I think, so maybe into the chicane. Albers has had a look. Or maybe Massa's made a mistake at turn number 4 and has lost that position to the Force India. I suspect it's the latter. But there you can see the Brazilian going through 13. Now got Robert Kubica behind him. And Montoya doing quite well at the moment. He did lose that position at the start, but he's regained 3 of them, and he's now running in 8th place. Who's 9th? It's Barrichello. 10th is Sutil. 11th is Kobayashi. So at least Kamui's made some progress in the McLaren. Let's see, those 3 drivers came in on lap number 10, and yeah, it's going to have to be a 3-stop strategy from there. Let's see what strategy everyone else is running, but it could have been that Kimi was meant to be doing a 2-stop, but this has forced him into a 3-stop strategy. So 20th place, Sebastian Vettel going through the final corner. 2 Red Bulls, 19th and 20th. So I think it is still just the 1 retirement. Let's see behind. Is that Hulkenberg behind? Looked like a BMW Sauber. So as Hulkenberg had another mare of a race, well, he certainly had one off going through turn number 11. This is coming out of the final corner, so Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso have nearly got a lap on the field already, as Alonso extends the lead to 3.7 seconds as the Toyota turns into the first corner. So there is 16th place Kimi Raikkonen, now going through the middle sector. He's hitting the apexes okay, so yeah, could well have been, first of all, a badly set up set of tyres, and then probably a mistake for Kimi Raikkonen since he is that far down. But then again, there's no Red Bulls in sight, so it could have also just been a mechanical issue, and Vettel and one of the Williams are still not 100% sure as to which Williams it was, but I'm going to guess it's Nick Heidfeld, who had an incident with Sebastian Vettel somewhere. Field really spreading out because Alonso is 3.8 seconds ahead of Mark Webber and Sato 2.2 seconds behind Mark Webber. And into the pits comes Alonso, so that's why he was quick in the early stages. He had much less fuel than the other runners. So that definitely looks like a three-stop strategy for Alonso. And Mark Webber goes through to take the lead of the race. So the Toyota back to where it usually is. And there's Jules Bianchi in 14th place. So that Williams that was in trouble was definitely Nick Heidfeld, because Bianchi is still up there in 14th place. Who else is pitting? Massa's pitting as well, so both Super Aguris making pit stops on the same lap. I wouldn't have said that was a recommended strategy, especially if they're having to double stack. Montoya's in the pits, as is Barrichello. So we've got 3-stop strategies on the way. And that does make me wonder, actually. Well, Fernando Alonso, there he is in 9th place. And he was quite a way ahead of Kimi Raikkonen before the Finn made his pit stop. So maybe if Kimi was genuinely an early stopper for a 3-stop strategy, but if they're all coming in on these laps, then it was a bit early for Raikkonen. So let's see how Kimi's race pans out. But you can see in front, on board with Takuma Sato, that was going through 12, now into 13. Now, is he going to make a pit stop? Let's see what he does. No pit stop. Daniel Ricciardo is going to be coming into the pits from 3rd place, so that explains some of his good pace in the early stages, and that he was able to overtake quite a few runners. He had a bit less fuel. Not much, but enough to make it a 3-stop strategy. So Jules Bianchi, there he is in 11th place, behind Sergio Perez, and Bianchi was one of the many that crashed out at Estoril. At the moment he is in 11th place, but he may gain some positions because drivers are making their way into the pits for the first of 3 stops. There goes Jules into 10th place at the expense of Daniel Ricciardo. Takuma Sato pulling out of the race. That is a mechanical issue. He hadn't made a pit stop just yet, so yeah, that's definitely not an issue that would occur when exiting the pits. So that's come up. That's wrecked his chance of closing in on Jenson Button's championship lead. And what seems to be the issue with Taku? Well, he sort of beached it onto the curb. And yeah, there you go. So that helps Mark Webber out quite a bit because he's now got quite an enormous lead, although having yet to make his first pit stop, over Christian Albers, 13.9 seconds the gap between those two. Kubica briefly up to 3rd, Sutil up to 4th, Kobayashi up to 5th place, and Di Resta up to 6th. And then the first of the runners that have pitted, Fernando Alonso in 7th place at this very moment. And looking at an overhead shot of Juan Pablo Montoya, currently in 11th place, having stopped, so he's not done too badly. And where is he? He's around in the final corner. That's a guardrail on the inside, so yeah, that must be the final corner. And, well, they're still trying to deal with Takuma Sato on the exit curb. That's at the exit of turn 3, I think, going at the end of the first sector point. The first sector point comes pretty much at the braking zone, or the slight right-hand kink, before you go into turn number 4. And he's made that a bit awkward to clear up. And there's some drivers behind having to slow because of it. You can see a Renault and then a McLaren going through. Barrichello and Raikkonen, I think that was. At this moment, Webber is still staying out and currently on lap 17, so it'd be a bit late for a 3-stop strategy if he is on that very strategy, but could well be that he is running just a 2-stop race, and that would definitely help him in the battle against Fernando Alonso. As Sergio Perez is coming into the pits from 8th place, so he'll lose that briefly to Bianchi unless the Williams driver follows him through. And there's confirmation, well, it's a suspension problem, but yeah, a lot of that could well have been down to the curb that he was riding. But yeah, something going a bit wrong with probably a damper in the front or the back end. He could well have been a front end damper problem if he turned into the first couple of corners and all of a sudden the front just destroys itself because it has no damping. There he is, gone at turn number 3. In the wilderness almost. And Bianchi didn't pit, so whoever it was that made a pit stop in front of him, it was Sergio Perez. It was the only one on that lap. And there's the other Ferrari of Timo Glock running ahead of the Williams, going into turn number 4. He is currently a second behind Kimi Räikkönen. And we've got another pitter, it's Robert Kubica coming in from 3rd place. And it'll briefly move Adrian Sutil up to 3rd, so we've now got both Force Indias running in the top 3, behind Mark Webber, race leader. And there goes Sutil in that newfound 3rd place, although he has been up at the front this season already, thanks to his victory at Adelaide. And there goes Nico Hülkenberg through turn 4, currently in 20th place, and last of the runners at the moment. Again, another difficult weekend for him, qualifying last by a couple of tenths as well. And there is Fernando Alonso, he's in traffic. That's not good news for his strategy if he is 3-stopping. And if he is 3-stopping and the drivers in front are 2-stopping, then yeah, it's not working too brilliantly. He couldn't really pull out enough of a lead over Mark Webber before making his first fuel stop. And what have we got? Montoya versus one of the Renaults. That's Montoya versus Kubica. That was at the exit of 3. Montoya running ahead of Kubica after their first stops. Sergio Perez down in 16th place after his pit stop. And let's briefly move Lewis Hamilton up there. And Paul Di Resta coming into the pits, so that will help Alonso regain some lost ground behind the traffic as he moves back up to 5th place. But still Mark Webber continues. I think he's 2-stopping. And I think Alonso's 3-stopping, and that will make his strategy of winning the race a little bit tricky. Because Webber, at the moment, he's controlling things up at the front, and at this stage, Toyota really have stolen a bit of a march. On the opposition, that was Daniel Ricciardo, looking at the inside and then the outside of turn 1. Did he make the corner? Yes, he did. They lost a little bit of time there behind Jules Bianchi. Now the battle for 6th place between those two. And Di Resta rejoining in 11th place, ahead of Kimi Räikkönen as well, so Kimi's early pit stop really did not work well for him. Yes, Christian Albers runs off the track at turn number 11 and hands that place to Adrian Sutil. The Adelaide race winner now up to 2nd ahead of Christian Albers. For both drivers having yet to make their first stop, as is Mark Webber, but Webber continuing and Sutil coming into the pits. So that'll help his in-lap somewhat, although he wasn't really necessary for Albers to let him through. Although, as we obviously see, that was a mistake on behalf of Christian Albers. And is anybody else going to pit? Well, Bianchi's going to pit as well from 5th place it would have been. But anyway, it's moved Fernando Alonso up to 4th place now. How far behind Mark Webber is he now? Well, we've got Albers 16.7 seconds behind Webber. How far behind is Kamui Kobayashi? Not doing too badly in the other McLaren. And he's going to gain quite a lot from this first round of pit stops. There we are, having a look at the Japanese driver. Decent season, although his qualifying does leave quite a bit to be desired. Certainly not as quick as Kimi Räikkönen in the one lap. Oh, a lot of Montoya! Juan Pablo Montoya out of the race. That's yet another dismal race for BMW Sauber confirmed, although this time it was not Montoya's fault. Mark Webber is into the pits from the race lead. A lot later than Alonso, 7 laps later than Fernando Alonso. And you can see, look at that right rear tyre. That is causing a bit of an airborne moment. Albers and Kobayashi into the pits as well. Now, keep an eye out for Fernando Alonso and see where he regains compared to Mark Webber, because if Webber can get a good pit stop and rejoin ahead of Alonso, then he is looking good. And Raikkonen going off the circuit at turn 11, so rejoining right into the path of the Williams, but just about safely. It was the Williams of Nick Heidfeld, so Kimi Raikkonen, who's now was in 10th place, but now back down to 11th with that mistake. And Webber's rejoined behind Fernando Alonso, so that was crucial for Fernando to get ahead of Mark Webber. Because if Webber is 2 stopping, then Alonso's 3-stop strategy, he needs to make this count now. This is the time to gain time over Webber before making another pit stop. In fact, that was a fairly slow stop. 10.3 seconds now behind Fernando Alonso, and he's only just ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo's having an absolutely brilliant race. And if Di Resta is doing quite well as well, up in 8th place, then that pretty much confirms to me that Toro Rosso have gone big with their upgrade tokens. And, well, you can see Montoya. He's doing a Sato over the curb of turn 3. And I'm pretty sure it is a puncture that has happened with Montoya's car, because the right rear was down and the left front was a bit high in the air. We switch to Jules Bianchi in 15th place, going through the middle sector, that's through 9, and then through 10, which is flat out in these cars, and now through 11. We saw Raikkonen having an off there a lap or two ago, and indeed it was a puncture that went wrong for Juan Pablo Montoya. Let's do a quick recap of the running order, because we're approaching a third distance, and, well, there is Takuma Sato, so at least he's not alone. And Di Resta's just moved up past Robert Kubica for 7th place, so Toro Rosso having a good race. Fernando Alonso leads by 10 and a bit seconds from Mark Webber, both I think on different strategies. Alonso on a 3-stop strategy and Webber on a 2. Then Daniel Ricciardo, there he is, in 3rd place, less than half a second behind Mark Webber. We've got Adrian Suttle 4th. Christian Albers 5th, so both Force Indias doing quite well, despite what I'm hearing is a missing of a deadline of what they're wanting to do in Estoril this race and the following one at Mugello, so that will do there. That's looking good if they're missing deadlines. 4th and 5th for Suttle and Albers, and Barrichello is up into 6th place at the moment in the Renault. He's jumped Robert Kubica in the pit stops somehow, even though we saw Kubica briefly ahead of Barrichello in the opening phase of the race. Sandwiching the 2 Renaults is Paul Di Resta in 7th, and 9th is Kamui Kobayashi, so McLaren's race not going as dismally as Kimi Raikkonen's. Well, still a fairly dismal race for McLaren, but at least Kobayashi's not doing too badly. It'll certainly help their Constructors' Championship bid, especially if there's no Hondas in the top 11. And completing the top 10, by the way, is the Williams of Nick Heidfeld, so despite losing quite a large section of his front end, he has got back up the order into 10th place. Partly at the expense of Kimi Raikkonen's off at that very corner there that Webber and Ricciardo have just gone through. And at the moment it looks as if Mark Webber is starting to stretch it out a little bit over Ricciardo. Remember that it is very difficult to overtake on this variant of the Hungaroring. The extension of the straight in 2003 definitely honours an engine failure for Lewis Hamilton in the Red Bull. Mercedes-powered Red Bull, and obviously the German engine in the back of that has gone wrong. It wasn't really in the running order anyway, so Red Bull having a pretty terrible race, and especially with Sebastian Vettel losing a large section of his front end a la Nick Heidfeld. And look at this, the 3-way battle going into the first corner. Kubica's not very quick at this stage of the race. He's got Kobayashi and Heidfeld, and soon Kimi Raikkonen. And, well, he's lost a wheel as well, has Hamilton. So, engine failure, smash it into the wall, because why not? It says water leak, but that's basically an engine problem. This is Adrian Suttle going through the chicane, and yellow flags now cleared, so all green around the circuit. There's a few nice bits of greenery around the edges of the circuit and on the outside in the form of some trees. A lot of forest in the middle of this circuit, so that provides a nice... Off goes Kubica! That was at the turn number 9 complex. 3 positions gone. So Kobayashi, Heidfeld and Kimi Raikkonen all gaining at the expense of that driver there, Robert Kubica's mistake at turn number 9. And we have now gone past 1/3 distance. We're now on lap 25 out of 70. Slightly shortened race on this 3.9 kilometre circuit. Usually 77, but on this one we have got 70. And look at this, Heidfeld versus Kobayashi going into the first corner. Heidfeld up the inside, both powered by the same engine, but it was the Williams that gains the advantage over the McLaren going into turn number 1. Now we've got Kobayashi as teammate, Kimi Raikkonen. So McLaren's running 9th and 10th. And there's Adrian Sutil, who is 9.3 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo, who still just 7/10 behind Mark Webber. So that battle is not done just yet. And Webber, 11.6 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. I imagine both drivers will be pushing quite hard before Alonso's second pit stop, which should be coming at about lap 35 if the 3-stop pattern is to be followed. But there is race leader Alonso in the first corner. I think he does have the fastest lap of the race, as he would have been pulling away in that opening stint. So Super Gurries, once again proving quite quick. Well, where did Felipe Massa go? I'm trying to remember what happens to the Brazilian. Let's try and recap. So there's been 4 retirements in this race so far, and they've been consisted of Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando... No, it's not Fernando. He's leading the race. Juan Pablo Montoya and Takuma Sato. Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton. Those are your 4 retirements so far. So, I'm trying to remember what on earth happened to Felipe Massa. Did he have an off somewhere? Or did he have a mechanical issue somewhere? Or did he choose a 3-stop strategy that's not worked out well? Either way, he's not in the top 11. And there you can see the last of the runners of the points. And this is golden ticket for Kimi Raikkonen, but he's not taking advantage of that at the moment. The real one taking advantage of it is Mark Webber, running in 2nd place. Had a pretty difficult spell with a few unlucky races, being caught up in some debris, although the Japanese Grand Prix was of his own making. And then the European Grand Prix was of his teammates' making, but at the moment he is in 2nd place, and if his 2-stop strategy works out and he wins this race, then he's looking pretty good to close in the gap on the 3 championship contenders at the front and to make it a 4-way battle for the championship. And how far behind is he? He is 56 points behind Jenson Button, championship leader. So it's still a bit of a tall order, but it's doable with plenty of races to go. This is round 11 out of 18, so 8 races to go, 7 after this one. And looking good for Mark Webber. So on board with Christian Albers going through the right of turn number 5 this will be. We can see a big crowd on the outside as into the pits comes Matthias Lauda. So is that going to move Nico Hülkenberg out of last place? Hold your breath everyone, because a BMW Sauber is going to gain a position. And at the same time, go a lap down on Fernando Alonso, but up to 17th place goes Nico Hülkenberg as he goes into the first corner, running these soft Pirellis, and I wonder what tyres the Super Gurries are running. Definitely Pirellis, but what compound? We may never know. I only seem to have the information on McLaren and BMW Sauber, it seems. And Hülkenberg goes a lap down, so his brief moment of joy at gaining 1 position has now been soured by going a lap down, so looks as if he's heading for another non-score unless something really dramatic happens. 16 places in front of him. 2 McLarens going into combat into turn 1, and Kimi Raikkonen moves up into 9th place. That is a sensible move on the part of McLaren, even if Kobayashi was a bit reluctant, but that'll definitely help Kimi Raikkonen's bid for the championship. McLaren still got plenty of tokens remaining, but the some that they have used prior to Estoril haven't worked out as planned. I through the middle sector. That is still the Force India we're looking at. It's Christian Albers, and closing in on him is Rubens Barrichello in the Renault. Rubens having another good race. He had a fantastic race at the European Grand Prix at Donington. So from the back, nearly got a podium, but was just beaten at the end by Takuma Sato. Thanks to Sato's fresher tyres, that was. Mark Webber in second place. I think was he defending going into the first corner? I think he was. Daniel Ricciardo looking to make a move now on the Toyota. And whoa, way off the track goes Jules Bianchi, but he's saved that. 15th place, Jules Bianchi. And there is Felipe Massa in front of him in 14th place. So at least Felipe is still in the running, but down in 14th, which, considering where his teammate is, isn't particularly good. Now then, through the final series of corners went Bianchi, but this is the battle we're looking at now. And the one that we're supposed to be looking at, but we switched to Kimi Raikkonen. Now back up to 9th place. And looking to salvage something out of what has been a pretty terrible race for him, to be honest. And in a McLaren that's fallen off the pace compared to the Toyota, the Honda, but in particular the Super Aguri, who have come on leaps and bounds in Estoril. Through 4 goes Bianchi. He's got a Ferrari behind him. Is that Glock or Perez? We may never know, as Daniel Ricciardo now trying to look at the inside once again into the first corner, and this is helping Fernando Alonso's cause for a race win, because he's now got the gap up to 13 seconds. If these two keep battling, that gap is going to keep growing and growing. Nick Heidfeld has come into the pits from 8th place in the Williams. Is that going to move Kimi Raikkonen up another position? Indeed it is. And there's your race leader going on his way, and wouldn't it be good for him if he scored a race win this season? And they could prove to be, if it carries on like this, Super Aguri could prove themselves to be particularly heavy disruptors for the championship. And there goes the McLaren Raikkonen. Kobayashi behind in 9th place. Oh, Mark Webber way off the circuit, bang! He's out! Mark Webber's crashed it out of the race! Wow, both Toyotas then not going to score. Wow, that was clumsy, careless. There's a wheel going to come back onto the circuit. Better be careful, because here comes Albers. Oh no, he's gone. Well, he's lost his front end, so Christian Albers is going to lose a lot of time. Well, he's going to lose some time coming into the pits, but I'm pretty sure he was on a 2-stop strategy, so that's going to compromise his race quite badly. Now this is golden ticket for Kimi Raikkonen, as he moves quite a lot of positions up the order. He moved up to 8th thanks to Heidfeld's pit stop. He'll move up to 7th courtesy of the smashed front end of Christian Albers. And he'll move up to 6th place courtesy of Mark Webber, absolutely totaling it at turn number 11. But there's your new 3rd place driver, Adrian Sutil, who's 7.6 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo, now in 2nd place for the Toro Rosso. Savour this moment, because Toro Rosso are last in the championship, and Ricciardo 2nd at the moment, and Di Resta up in 5th as well. Toro Rosso could have an absolute field day if they stay like this. They nearly had one in Estoril as well, but both drivers retired. First of all, Ricciardo smashing it at the first corner, and then Di Resta unlucky to suffer a transmission failure. Glock in 12th, the 2 Williams now behind, and Di Resta, that's in 5th place, having a bit of an off at turn number 12. A few kinks before turn number 13, but he's still there in 5th place. He's chasing Rubens Barrichello, now in 4th place. And now both McLaren's race looking quite a bit better, up in 6th and 7th place. Raikkonen and Kobayashi ahead of the Renault of Kubica now. That was thanks to Kubica having an off on the corner that Alonso is approaching. Well, he was approaching now, pretty much, but we switched to Adrian Sutil, 3rd place. Now into turn 4, hitting that apex no problem. So, 2 Williamses. This could be a battle going into the first corner. Bianchi missing the apex a little bit out the final corner, and that's going to give Heidfeld an opportunity to try and get up alongside, but straight line speed's very similar in these 2 cars. But is Heidfeld going to manage it? Not quite. Bianchi hangs on to his 13th place. Fernando Alonso is in the pits for his second pit stop, so lap 32, a little bit earlier for his two-stop strategy, but he had a fairly comfortable lead over Daniel Ricciardo. But where is he going to rejoin? He'll definitely rejoin behind Ricciardo. And Bianchi off the track, and that gives Heidfeld 13th place. So we've got a Toro Rosso leading a race. I'll repeat again, savour that. And Suttle taking second place. And so Alonso, I think, should rejoin in third, because we've got Rubens Barrichello into the pits as well. And Barrichello and Kimi Raikkonen as well from 6th place. So Kimi's going to drop a fair few positions, but despite his earlier pit stop, I think he was definitely the first to pit scheduled pretty much, but could have been a mechanical issue that brought him in a bit earlier than intended. There is your new race leader, Daniel Ricciardo, in the Toro Rosso. 5th place now is Kamui Kobayashi. He's got Kubica and Perez behind. That's 6th and 7th. Perez hasn't done too badly if he's running in a genuine 7th place. Because he's qualified... Was he on the back row or was he 20th? Let's check. Well, he was on the back row. He was 21st on the grid, ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. So on board the overhead shot, it was of Christian Albers. It might have been Adrian Suttle, but I think it might have been Albers. It definitely looked like his helmet. Albers in 9th place. So what's the gap between Ricciardo and Suttle? Pretty much 7 seconds, as that's Nico Hulkenberg in 16th place now. Not last, because I think that belongs to Matthias Lauda. Bianchi off again. That's at turn number 11 this time. So he's having a bit of a handful in the Williams at the moment. And he was, before that off, he was 1.1 behind 13th place, Kimi Raikkonen now. But now that gap is extended to 4 seconds. So through the final corner, overhead the Williams. Now we switch to Sergio Perez in 7th place through turn 4, no problems. So Kobayashi 5th, Kubica 6th, Perez 7th. Got Felipe Massa now back up to 8th place. But if he's 3-stopping, then that's not particularly good for him, because he'll drop down the order with his second pit stop. He may regain some of that when other drivers make more pit stops, but then the third pit stop will drop him even further down. So Alonso, he's 10 seconds or so behind Ricciardo. So pit stop taking about how long do you reckon? About 14 seconds ahead of Ricciardo before making the pit stop. Pit stop's taking about 24 seconds at the Hungaroring. Maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe 26. And Bianchi, is that going to be another off? Not this time. He's got Lewis Hamilton, 15th place, bearing down on him. No, it's not. It's Sebastian Vettel, actually. Remember, Hamilton had that engine failure a bit earlier on. So that's the first we've seen of the Red Bull since he lost his front end. Still unknown as to what actually happened there, but probably an incident with Nick Heidfeld. There's 8th place driver Felipe Massa, and behind him is the Force India of Christian Albers. 10th, it is Rubens Barrichello, so that was after his... Oh, Bianchi is off at turn 2 this time. He's having a dreadful time of it at the moment. Daniel Ricciardo into the pits from the race lead. So that looks like a 3-stop strategy for the Toro Rosso. That's going to put a bit of a smile on the face of Fernando Alonso. But there is a new disruptor in the race lead, Adrian Suttle, and I'm pretty sure he is 2-stopping in this race, as he was left it quite a while before making his first pit stop, and he gained a lot of time out of that. So clever strategy from the Force India to put him onto a 2-stop strategy. If he is indeed 2-stopping. And Ricciardo, he's rejoined in 4th place behind the other Toro Rosso, Paul Di Resta. There he is. Not often yet. Oh, Bianchi, well, that's another off. I think he's doing a Hulkenberg from Austria. So we may be seeing quite a lot of Bianchi in this race, but most of it not on the circuit. And how far back his own teammate is Daniel Ricciardo. I think it's 6 seconds or so. Let's take a closer look. 8.6 seconds behind Paul Di Resta. There he goes, through turn number 11, and now we switch to Kimi Raikkonen. Which corner is he approaching? Turn 4, that is. Now into turn number 5. How far behind Heidfeld is Raikkonen? It's about a second, the gap. I think Heidfeld was one of the first ones to pit out of those two, so if Kimi can stay out a bit longer and keep up to Heidfeld, then he will gain a position at the expense of the Williams. And Ricciardo's just lost a position to Robert Kubica. Or is he in the pits again? He's in the pits again, Daniel Ricciardo, so something not quite right with that Toro Rosso. Was it a fuel hose problem, or is it something else? But who else is in the pits? Perez in the pits, Massa in the pits, Glock in the pits as well. So here come the second round of stops. Well and truly underway. Second round of stops for the 3 stoppers, that will be. So that's going to move Albers up to 6th place. Going to move Barrichello up to 7th place. Heidfeld up to 8th. Raikkonen up to 9th. As we look at Raikkonen's teammates, that was in 4th place, Kamui Kobayashi. And he's not far ahead of Robert Kubica. There's going to be a battle between those two in the next few laps. And that pit stop for Daniel Ricciardo really costing him. He's now down to 10th place. There he was, just going out of shot ahead of Sebastian Vettel, as Hülkenberg comes into the pits and drops down to last place. So, what's going on at the front? Well, there's Fernando Alonso, 2nd place now. 4.5 seconds behind race leader Adrian Sutil. Di Resta up in 3rd place in the Toro Rosso, and Kobayashi 4th, just ahead of Kubica. He's a second ahead of Kubica. He actually pulled out a little bit over the Renault driver. Then we've got Christian Albers in 6th place, Barrichello 7th, Heidfeld 8th, Raikkonen 9th, and Daniel Ricciardo. Poor Daniel Ricciardo, more bad luck for the Toro Rosso team. Although Paul Di Resta is up there in 3rd place. Fairly lonely in 3rd actually. He's 5 seconds behind Alonso, and he's 12.7 seconds ahead of Kamui Kobayashi. There goes Christian Albers in 6th place now. So this race really fluctuating in terms of race positions, because there's lots of drivers in very different places of the race, thanks to the pit stops, thanks to some offs and some mechanical issues, and thanks to some key runners not finishing. Di Resta's into the pits from that 3rd place. That's fairly late for the 2nd round of 3 stops. Could Toro Rosso switch him onto a 2-stop strategy from there? It's possible, but he will be struggling badly at the end. And at a place where grip is at a premium, you may need the fresher set of tyres, so keep an eye on Di Resta and see what he actually does. He'll drop behind Kobayashi and Kubica, potentially behind Christian Albers. Well, let's see, let's wait and find out. Yep, Christian Albers goes through. Is Barrichello going to go through as well? He's just crossed the start-finish line there. And through goes Barrichello. What about Heidfeld? Nope, not quite Heidfeld, because Di Resta's rejoined in 7th place now. We've still got both Toro Rossos in the points, but Ricciardo's unlucky issue. And Di Resta's probably 3-stop strategy is still looking quite good actually, in 7th at the moment, but with many drivers due to pit earlier than Di Resta, well, quite a lot of drivers in front have still got one more pit stop to make, but Di Resta's will be coming a bit later. That's a Ferrari we're looking at. It's Sergio Perez in 12th place behind Sebastian Vettel. Just going through 4, now turn 5, the right-hand corner that's quite bumpy at the apex. There's your race leader, Adrian Sutil. 4.7 now ahead of Fernando Alonso, so he's pulled out some gap over the Super Guri. And Kobayashi in 3rd place, I'm fairly sure is 2-stopping as well, so that's looking quite good for Kamui Kobayashi if he can put a lengthy stint in the middle and maintain track position over some of the key runners. So that'll do McLaren's championship charge quite a bit of good. There's a lock-up for Fernando Alonso going into turn 8, so he's definitely pushing to try and catch up to Sutil. He's probably got Kobayashi sorted out, especially if both are stopping one more time. 19.7 seconds ahead of the Japanese driver. So I think the key battle now is the battle for third between Kobayashi, Kubica and a lot of others. But some good race pace for the Japanese driver nonetheless. Perez and Massa, 12th and 13th. Massa's strategy not really working out very well. And that mistake of Alonso now means that Adrian Sutill's over 5 seconds ahead of the Spaniard. And Kubica's into the pits. That will please Kobayashi, because Kubica definitely looked quicker than the McLaren at that point of the race, but evidently it was due to a lower fuel load. Through turn number 5 goes Alonso. Is anybody else pitting on this lap? I don't think so. So Kubica's pit stop, that moves Christian Albers up into 4th place. It'll move Barrichello up to 5th, Di Resta up to 6th, Heidfeld 7th. Now Kimi Raikkonen's back up to 8th place. How far behind Heidfeld is Raikkonen? Because if Raikkonen is going longer, and I suspect he is compared to Nick Heidfeld, then Kimi should be able to jump the Williams and maybe able to rescue a few points or so. At the moment, he's 4.2 seconds behind the Williams, so Heidfeld definitely using a low fuel load to his advantage. And Kimi, it seems, just doesn't really have much pace in this race. Daniel Ricciardo, 9th place now. Kubica rejoined from his pit stop in 10th, ahead of Sebastian Vettel, just ahead of Sebastian Vettel, as that gap is down to just 9/10 of a second. We watch Gilles Bianchi going through turn 5, now we switch to Adrian Sutil, race leader. 2nd place Fernando Alonso, 5.5 seconds behind the Force India driver. I think Sutil would be pitting first out of these two for their final stops, so Alonso needs to keep in touch if he's going to take his first win of the season. Having a look at quite a few different drivers at this stage of the race, because there's a fair bit going on. Nico Hulkenberg 17th and last at the moment. Rubens Barrichello, that's under pressure from Paul Di Resta going into turn number 4, but no chance of making an overtake round the outside there, so Di Resta is going to have to wait until probably the main straight. And there's Barrichello's teammate Robert Kubica, 10th place at the moment. I should probably do a recap of the Estoril race, just so I can go through the results, because we're on lap 43 and I haven't even gone through those yet. Well, I hold that thought, because off the track and spinning goes Paul Di Resta from 6th place. He'll lose that to Heidfeld. Is he going to lose it to Kimi Raikkonen? Well, Kimi's coming through. Now he saw that just in time and dodged the Toro Rosso nicely. So Kimi Raikkonen up to 7th. It's feeling they need to defend somewhat into turn number 13. There's Raikkonen's teammate Kobayashi, 3rd, going through the first corner. Yeah, quick recap of the Estoril race, which was a race of high attrition, saw 12 retirements in total, and it saw both Toyotas 1st and 2nd, and it was Mark Webber who took that win, 2nd of the season, ahead of Jenson Button. And Jenson Button was lucky to keep that 2nd because he had a few hairy moments, including one major off at the first corner, hit the wall quite hard, but somehow getting away without any damage. 3rd was Fernando Alonso, who did have a superb race at Estoril, probably my driver of the day that meeting, going from 7th to 3rd. And in 4th place, let's go through the rest of the top 10 actually from that race, because we had 4th was Kimi Raikkonen, 5th Sato, 6th was Nick Heidfeld, then it was 7th, who was 7th? 7th place was Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull, 8th Felipe Massa, 9th Matthias Lauda, and 10th and last of the runners was Lewis Hamilton. And what did that do for the championship? Well, it extended Jenson Button's lead over his two main rivals, Sato and Raikkonen. Webber now breaking 100 points. And as mentioned before, well, let's see Kimi Raikkonen. He's about to lose a place to Paul Di Resta going into the first corner. So recovering, Di Resta retaking a position off of Kimi Raikkonen. And yeah, for the Constructors' Championship, Toyota have a large lead now over McLaren, BMW and Honda. both of those two are tied on 168, but Toyota 1258. 90 points is the gap. And Superguri's good meeting at Estoril now means that they're 4th in the championship, ahead of Force India. 92 points for Superguri, 79 for Force India. Red Bull on 71, then Williams 57, Renault 42, then Ferrari 33, BMW Sauber. Oh, that was Williams going off. It's Nick Heidfeld this time. 6th place Heidfeld, making a mistake at turn number 11. And to finish the rest of the championship standings, BMW Sauber 10th in the championship, 32 points. Toro Rosso 10 last. But they can definitely make a big dent into BMW Sauber. I'm just trying to see what happened there. Albers and Kobayashi having a bit of a battle for 3rd place. That's position swapping constantly between those two. And somehow Kobayashi hanging on, so he's lost quite a lot of time compared to Alonso. So Albers had a go, but Kobayashi hanging on in the first few corners. I think that might well have been the case. So rounding turn 5, that's the Williams of Heidfeld, and there's the battle for 3rd between Kobayashi and Albers. Both two stopping and both losing ground compared to Fernando Alonso, because Alonso on that 3-stop strategy has better tyres at this point, which means that he can push harder for a little bit, well, he can just push harder in general. Off the track, that's another off for Jules Bianchi at turn 4 this time. I think he's trying to make a record here, having offset every single corner of this circuit. Let's see if he goes off at the chicane. No such problems this time. It's not usually a corner you'd make a mistake, but these next few corners we've seen mistakes, particularly at this one. And Bianchi's got that one licked. So, let's see, Kobayashi 3rd, still defending that 3rd place off of Christian Albers. Now then, it'll be important for him to remain there and keep track position. And he's in a bit of a battle with Robert Kubica at this moment. And this could well be for the final podium spot, as Kobayashi turns right at turn number 5. Making good use out of his soft tyres in the McLaren, but he's needing to defend a little bit going into the chicane, because Albers is all over the back of him. Vettel versus Ferrari, I think that's Timo Glock. And well, Kobayashi, that was a bit wide through turn 10, and he's just about hung on to that one through 11. So Albers really putting him under pressure, and behind, Barrichello is going to come into play in the other Renault. We're on lap number 47 now. Well, Kimi Raikkonen's just overtaken Paul Di Resta back for 7th place. And Di Resta, well, he's lost a lot of time. I wonder if Di Resta's made another small mistake somewhere that's meant that he's lost a position to Kimi Raikkonen. Well, Albers versus Kobayashi through, I think it must have been the first corner. I think Albers has got him this time. Christian Albers moving up into 3rd place. And with Suttle well up there, he could well be making this a very, very handy day for Force India, as Kubica versus... is that Ricciardo this time? Kubica versus Ricciardo, now Timo Glock. The tyres are starting to get a bit old for some of these drivers. And that's the pit stop we've been waiting for. Adrian Suttle into the pits from the race lead, and he'd pulled out some gap over Fernando Alonso, now 5.5 seconds. It did get down to 3 and a bit seconds, so I wonder if Fernando Alonso made a small mistake somewhere. And if he did, well, he certainly doesn't need that. But there's your new 3rd place driver, Christian Albers. Now, what can he do? Can he get a podium? And that could be his first of the season. And Jules Bianchi, no problems through turn 4 this time. Kobayashi's into the pits now, so Albers had more fuel at this point and was able to lap a bit quicker than Kobayashi. So, yeah, Force India's race pace has been absolutely superb for this race meeting. So, I suspect, actually, that if the team boss had forgotten to send in his selections, that he may well have autoed harder tyres, and that's certainly done them quite a bit of good. But hold that thought, once Alonso makes his final pit stop a few laps later, this is the time for Alonso to push hard now. And how much did Suttle lose? It was about 25 seconds that Suttil lost to Fernando Alonso. So it takes about 25 seconds to make a pit stop here at the Hungaroring. So that's the gap that Alonso needs to build if he's going to rejoin ahead of Suttil and take a victory. Kobayashi, he's down to 13th place. He'd lost a lot of time in this battling with Christian Albers in the laps before his pit stop. So that's not worked well at all for Kobayashi. How much gap does Alonso gain over Suttil? He actually lost a bit of time in that sector, so yeah, Alonso, if he's making another pit stop, he needs to sort it, because there is your potential race winner, Adrian Suttil. Where did he qualify on the grid? I think he qualified quite well. Was it 14th place? No, 14th place to potential victory. That's a stunning drive for Suttil if he can stay there. Alonso, well, he's pushing a bit too hard because he's really struggling with the car and not making use out of his low fuel load before his final pit stop. He's going to go through another lap and see what he can make out of this. What have we got further down? We've got Barrichello up into 4th place now at the moment, but with another pit stop to make, I believe, ahead of Heidfeld. Another pit stop, and then Raikkonen another pit stop, and then the question mark, Paul Di Resta. What is he doing? Because he stopped on lap 39. I'm fairly sure it's still a 3-stop strategy that he's running, but quite a bit later than usual. And Ricciardo's a question mark. I don't know who's going to be on the podium in this race. It could be Albers, it could be Kubica. Well, we're going to find out shortly. Or we're going to get a clue, because Albers is in the pits making his pit stop, and his target to get out ahead of Robert Kubica. Kubica 9th place at the moment, and at that point he was chasing Kobayashi. So Kubica he's definitely got the jump on Kobayashi, but he's got the jump on Christian Albers as well. We could be seeing Robert Kubica take 3rd place in this race in the Renault, but we've still got quite a bit of distance to go. Still got 21 laps to go for a lot of these runners. And there's Kimi Raikkonen. That's a slow Kimi Raikkonen. It's Kimi Raikkonen having a problem going out of turn number 3. And is that going to be another member of the top 4 not capitalising on any form of gaining on points? So this will be a bit of an anomaly of a race if Raikkonen ends up retiring from this race. Continuously dropping back. So yeah, I think that very early pit stop was probably down to just being a very early pit stop for Raikkonen, because he's trundling back to the pits, and normally you have one mechanical issue per race, unless he's been unlucky to suffer another mechanical issue. But continuing to drop back, can he make it back into the pits? Yes, he has done. So Kimi Raikkonen at least still in the race, but yeah, he's no chance of some points, I'm afraid. So it looks likely that the top 4 in the championship, they're going to stay on the points tally that they've got. So yeah, as I say, very much an anomaly of a race if it stays like that, with none of the top 4 scoring. Going through turn number 2. Well, let's switch to Fernando Alonso, race leader, and he really isn't. And off the track goes Paul Di Resta once again. That's at turn 4 this time. He's 3.5 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and Ricciardo himself has got Robert Kubica just 2 tenths behind, so Kubica looking to make a move on the Toro Rossos. When did Albers rejoin? He rejoined in 11th place, but there's still quite a lot of drivers need to make pit stops. Not making his just yet is Rubens Barrichello, 3rd place now, Rubens. And that looked like a bit of a wide line for Adrian Suttil going through the first corner. But he's definitely pegging the gap between himself and Fernando Alonso. Race leader Fernando Alonso, 17.4 seconds now ahead of Suttil. More drivers making pit stops, 3 at once. Kubica. Man, is that Kubica in the pits again? Well, it could well be in the pits again. So I was wrong about Kubica. So who on earth is going to finish on the final place of the podium? That is a big question mark. But Vettel in the pits as well, as is Sergio Perez. Rounding the final corner goes Alonso, race leader, but certainly not making use out of tyres and fuel for whatever reason. There's Christian Albers, there's Felipe Massa having an off-track moment. Not quite as severe as some of the runners we've seen this afternoon, but Felipe Massa struggling to stay on the circuit a little bit. As he goes through the middle sector, turn 8, then turn 9. Then a few metres later, turn 10, as Heidfeld comes into the pits from 4th place. Now let's see where he can rejoin. As Kamui Kobayashi, there he is in 8th place now, ahead of Kubica, so things looking still fairly good for Kobayashi despite that hairy battle with Christian Albers. And in fact, Albers running ahead of Kobayashi, so yeah, there is 2 seconds between those two. And where can Heidfeld... Well, Heidfeld, he could do something... Oh, off! Is that Raikkonen off? He's off and he's out! So the top 4 definitely not scoring points in this race. So that's... he had a pretty terrible time of it in this race anyway, so... yeah, no big loss. But, yeah. So one of the few to actually crash out, I think... well, joining Mark Webber, and Webber crashed at that same corner, so at least Webber's not alone. As off the track once again goes Jules Bianchi. That's a new one this time. That's at the exit of turn 12. Matthias Lauda comes into the pits, and he's going to drop down a little bit down the order. Is Jules Bianchi going to gain a position at the expense of Matthias Lauda? I think so. There he goes, up to 13th place, behind Sebastian Vettel 12th. There goes Suttle, now second. Well, he's still second, and gaining on Alonso's race lead. 16.2 seconds, and 16.1 going through turn number 4. Could be that new tyres are more powerful than the low fuel if Suttle is closing in on Alonso's race lead. Timo Glock versus Lauda into turn 4. 15th place and 16th place are those two. And I'm still trying to work out who's going to be on the podium, because I think it's looking likely to be... it could be Christian Albers, but Barrichello's doing quite a good job in 3rd place. And if he can stretch out more of a gap over the Force India driver, then Rubens Barrichello could be looking good to steal a podium finish somehow, because he's... well, he had a small off at some point in the race, but he's pretty much kept it together. He's in the pits now. Rubens Barrichello into the pits from 3rd place. And this is an important one to see where he can rejoin. Heidfeld rejoined behind Albers and Kobayashi, by the way. So the Williams looking to try and do something about those two. At the moment, we are going to get both Toro Rossos moving up into 3rd and 4th place, it seems. Massa's into the pits as well. Barrichello dropping a bit down the order. Where is he going to rejoin? Very crucial to see where he rejoins in relation to Christian Albers. Albers crosses the start-finish line now. And Barrichello... has he just jumped Christian Albers, I wonder? I think he has done. The pit exit was there. And waiting to see the update in sector times, but I think Barrichello has jumped Christian Albers, and if both Toro Rossos are due in the pit soon, Barrichello looking good for a podium finish. Incredible. And we've got another crucial pit stop happening at the moment. Fernando Alonso from the race lead, looking to try and regain some of that lost time from Adrian Suttle, because Suttle looked quicker at that point. Well, he's definitely rejoined 2nd, it seems, but hasn't exited the pits just yet. There goes Di Resta, still in the final sector, approaching 13. So Alonso should rejoin comfortably in 2nd place. And he's going to try and do something about Adrian Suttle. Race leader now, Adrian Suttle. There he is, on board with him. And off the track goes Suttle, and spins! Suttle spins! Well, that was a silly mistake that he's made. And that's going to put Alonso right back into play. He's just crossed the 1st sector now. So Suttle still had quite a good lead over Alonso, who's probably had a bit of a slow stop actually, more than 25 seconds lost to the Force India. But he's going to gain a lot of that back thanks to that silly spin from Suttle. Di Resta now 3rd, Ricciardo now 4th, Barrichello 5th, ahead of Christian Albers. And we've got Kobayashi in 7th place now. Heidfeld closing very quickly to the back of the McLaren driver. So Heidfeld could be moving up the order in the closing stages. And we've got Kubica 9th, Massa now 10th, Perez now 11th. As through 11, that was the Toro Rosso, that was Paul Di Resta. And Kubica 9th, how far behind? He's quite a way behind Heidfeld actually. He is 14 plus seconds behind the Williams, but there, second place Alonso, 3 seconds behind Adrian Sutil. He gained 7 seconds thanks to that spin of Sutil, as Daniel Ricciardo comes into the pits from 4th place. And that's going to put Barrichello up to 4th, and it'll move Albers, Kobayashi, Heidfeld up a position. Maybe not Kubica though, because Kubica is quite a way behind Heidfeld. Let's see where Daniel Ricciardo rejoins. Keep an eye out when Kubica crosses the start-finish line. Be a bit of time yet. Alonso 3.1 seconds. He's not catching up to Sutil somehow. I'm surprised at that. Ricciardo, here comes, and that's Barrichello. And Ricciardo has rejoined ahead of Kubica. So Ricciardo in the points and looking quite good actually to stay there. As we are approaching the closing stages now, and could be that Adrian Sutil will be heading towards a victory, but can Alonso do anything about that? That's 10th place Felipe Massa. As Di Resta comes into the pits now, this will be important. I think he should rejoin in 7th place behind Barrichello, Albers, Kobayashi and Heidfeld battle. I'd be expecting Barrichello to be pulling away from that lot, so Rubens looking good for a podium finish, I think. As through 4 and 5 goes Alonso, he's not catching up to Sutil at all. So Adrian Sutil has got the pace on the Super Guri. As there is your 3rd place driver, Rubens Barrichello. He's close to getting a podium at Hockenheim, close to getting a podium at Donington. Could this be the race where he finally breaks his podium duck for Renault? Up to 4th goes Albers, 5th Kobayashi, 6th Heidfeld, but Heidfeld is right at the back of the McLaren and could well be challenging the Japanese driver for 5th place. And Kobayashi's actually stuck behind the BMW Sauber. Hulkenberg is not making it easy at all for either of them, and Heidfeld losing a lot of time behind the Hulkenberg BMW Sauber. And he's been rattled by that, is Heidfeld. But he's got it back together going through turn 11. But he lost 2 seconds to that, but he should regain that pretty quickly. As through 13 he goes. Then into 14, the final corner. 180 degree right hand hairpin that lasts about 200 metres in total. There's Matthias Lauda, the other Honda driver, just the one remaining Honda in this race, as Sato had that suspension issue, I believe. Or was it Jensen had a suspension issue and Sato had a puncture? Either way, those 2 drivers out, as are Mark Webber and Kimi Raikkonen due to crashes at turn 11. So what's that going to do for the championship? Well, if Sutil stays as he is, that's going to leapfrogging past Hamilton, but with Alonso in 2nd place at the moment. He won't leapfrog Alonso actually, so Alonso and Sutil will be 5th and 6th in the Drivers' Championship. And there's going to be a lot of shuffling in the lower reaches of the championship, because it's a bit of an out-of-place race with 11 laps to go. None of the top 4 will be scoring. Unusually, because they've all been quite reliable of the top 4, aside from perhaps I think the 2 Toyotas have been more unreliable than certainly the McLaren of Kimi Raikkonen, whose other retirement, whoa, Massa going off the track at turn 11 there. Now in 10th place, but he's going to come under pressure from Sergio Perez, the battle for the final point, and somehow Sebastian Vettel may get himself into the mix. But yeah, top 4 not scoring, and Raikkonen's only retirements this season have been crashes. He crashed out at Adelaide and he's crashed out of this one. Timo Glock going through turn 11 now, through turn 12. 14th place now, Timo Glock. Some 4.6 seconds behind Jules Bianchi in 13th place. And despite his multitude of offs, Bianchi is running in 13th ahead of Glock and ahead of Hulkenberg and ahead of Lauda as well. So it seems that Williams is quite quick at the moment. I mean, with Heidfeld up in 6th place, which makes me think that they've used quite a few of their upgrade tokens as well. And the later you use the tokens, that's Lauda thinking that the apex was somewhere in the Balloton Park. Through turn 1 there. But yeah, the longer you wait to use your tokens, the more effective they are. And McLaren still have 75 tokens left, and I suspect they're going to be using them in a bit of a hurry after the Tuscan Grand Prix at Mugello. Because that's the next period when you can use your tokens. And it seems as if they've dropped back in terms of their true race pace. I mean, Kobayashi has done a pretty good job to get up to 5th from where he started. I think he started 17th on the grid. Double check that, yeah, 17th for Kobayashi, now up to 5th place. Pretty much by staying out of trouble and using a 2-stop strategy pretty effectively. But there you can see Alonso going through the first corner. Despite newer tyres than Suttil, can't seem to do anything about it. So Suttil looking good for a race win, I think, in that Force India. 14th on the grid as well. That's been an incredible drive from the German, the Adelaide race winner. With Albers up in 4th place, that's going to do some damage in the battle for 4th in the championship against Super Guri. Even though Super Guri themselves have got 2 points, 2 cars in the points, with Alonso 2nd and Massa 10th at the moment. Off goes Lauda, but he keeps it pointing forward and rejoins no problem. 15th place Lauda now. So yeah, the championship standings. No Toyota's going to score. We've got McLaren, who looking good for 10 points. Although Heidfeld is closed the gap up quite quickly once again, so still going to be a battle between those two. And no Hondas in the points, so McLaren looking to gain one up over Honda in the battle for 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. They're the key one. Battle for 4th, Suttil 25, Albers 12, that'll give him 37 points, and would put them up to past 100 points, up to 129 points. No, it won't. It will put them... What's 37 plus 79? It will be 116 points. And then Super Guri, 18 plus 1, would put them to 111. So Force India would jump Super Guri in the championship if it stays like this. Still a few laps to go, and still some things could happen. And that something could happen in the battle for 5th, because Heidfeld, he is less than a second now behind Kobayashi. In fact, it's just half a second, the gap between those two. So rounding the final corner, and he's going to start lap 64, Adrian Suttil, race leader. And still extending the gap over Fernando Alonso. So I think Force India just got the race pace absolutely spot on. Could well be down to a harder compound of tyre, keeping the cars relatively stable compared to the other runners, and more consistent, the harder tyre. McLaren's and BMW Saubers choosing softs for this race, and in the hands of Kimi Raikkonen has not worked at all, because it really looked like he was struggling on the circuit. And it could well also be that the McLaren has lost a bit of pace compared to the main runners. So they need to do something after the Tuscan Grand Prix at Mugello if they're going to stay in the championship battle. And I have a good feeling as to what they're going to do, but that will all be revealed after the Tuscan Grand Prix. and into the Italian Grand Prix. May also reveal what BMW Sauber will be up to as well, but they're a bit less relevant, down in 10th in the championship. Although with Ferraris not looking to score either, then the battle for 9th. Well, the battle for 9th is going to get pretty tasty because we've got Toro Rosso 7th and 8th for Di Resta and Ricciardo. That's 6 plus 4, that's 10 points, so that won't move them out of last in the championship, but it will certainly propel them towards the battle for 9th between Ferrari and BMW Sauber. Give them 20 points, 12 points behind BMW Sauber it would give them. And let's wait and see what happens in the final 5.5 laps now, which is where Sutton and Alonso pretty much are. At the moment, Kobayashi is still just ahead of Nick Heidfeld, but that battle could go either way because Heidfeld is all over the back of the McLaren once again. And I'll tell you what, Kobayashi's not that far behind Christian Alba's 4th place either. He's only 1.5 seconds behind, but I think Alba's has got that one covered, just keeping the McLaren in check. And I don't think there's a battle for the final point on because Massa is pulling away from Sergio Perez. The gap 2.7 seconds between those two. As through the first corner with 5 laps remaining goes Adrian Sutil. And it's probably worth recapping his season because the Force India looked pretty quick from the first race. Although Sutil didn't score points. But then he took an amazing win at the Oceanian Grand Prix at Adelaide. And in fact holds some thought because I think Heidfeld's dropped back a bit from Kobayashi and is now in the clutches of the Toro Rossos. So Nick Heidfeld may well have had a go at Kobayashi, or he's made a mistake somewhere because he's now just less than a second ahead of Paul Di Resta. So that's worth keeping an eye on in the closing stages, and I'm pretty sure that the Toro Rossos have got fresher tyres than the Williams of Nick Heidfeld. Yes, Sutil took that win at Oceania, and then took a 9th at Japan, an 8th at Malaysia, then a couple of non-scores at Hockenheim and Monaco. That's Nico Hülkenberg we're looking at, by the way, before returning to the podium at Austria, and then points out again at Silverstone, and then a 9th place at the European Grand Prix at Donington, and then got involved in that 4-car pile-up at Estoril, which saw him losing pretty much his entire front ends, no front wheels and no nose. But this has been a brilliant return to form. Off the track again goes Di Resta. Is he going to tag the wall? I think he did, but he may have gotten away with it, but he's waiting for Kubica. Well, he's waiting for Hülkenberg first to come through, but he's still in the points, and Ricciardo 7th. That will make no difference to the Toro Rosso Constructors' Championship bid. But yeah, that's a mistake that Di Resta could have done without. And it may have put Kubica into contention, but Kubica was just a little bit too far back to really take advantage of that. Yeah, that's Heidfeld now 3.1 seconds now behind Kobayashi, so I think he may well have settled for 6th place. And Kobayashi is 1.4 seconds behind Albers. Now that he is free of the Heidfeld clutch, is he going to try and catch up to Christian Albers' 4th place? Let's see what happens in the final laps between those two. As we look at the Ferrari, that was a tad wide at the first part of the final corner, but managed to tuck back into the apex. It's Timo Glock in 14th place, chasing Jules Bianchi, but I think 14th place is where Glock will end up. And there's Rubens Barrichello in 3rd place at the moment, going through the final corner himself. And, well, he qualified 11th on the grid, by far his best qualifying of the season. And by far Renault's best qualifying. Oh, Kubica way off, and he's out! Kubica crashing out! So trying to chase Di Resta, it seems, and he's just binned it. And that's going to move Felipe Massa up to 9th. It'll move Sergio Perez up to 10th place. And then Sebastian Vettel on the brink of points. I think that's at turn 11, is it? I think it is turn 11. So Kubica crashing off at the same place as Raikkonen and Webber. That was a silly one. he's about to start his penultimate lap, I think, is Adrian Suttle. Indeed he is. So, Suttle now 8 seconds ahead of Alonso. Alonso's final set of tyres not really working to plan, even despite them being fresher, so Alonso pretty much settling for second place at this point now. And a clever race from Force India as well, similar to Lewis Hamilton actually, at the Chinese Grand Prix last season. Fewer stops compared to the other drivers, just 2 compared to Alonso's 3, and in fact most of the field's 3 stops. Aside from Kobayashi, I think. Kobayashi was 1 on a 2-stop strategy as well. And I think Christian Albers might have been 2-stopping as well, but he did qualify quite a bit higher than Suttle. But I think Albers was actually 2-stopping as well. He did make that mistake at turn 11 that let Suttle through. And that was before Suttle's first pit stop, I believe. And if anything, that was a turning point of the whole race, unbeknownst to myself. Because getting ahead of Albers pretty much set Suttle on his way to gaining track position over the rest of the field. It's a very well works out win for Adrian Suttle if he can keep it on track in this final lap of the race. There he is, going through the first few corners. That's going into turn 2 now, brake discs glowing. Bit of a speech impediment for me. Going through turn number 3, Adrian Suttle. Just a few more corners to go, a couple of sectors to go actually. And Alonso gained quite a bit over Suttle on that previous lap, but nowhere near enough to catch up in the dying stages, and in fact Suttle gaining a bit more time. We've got Sebastian Vettel being lapped by Suttle actually, so the top 10 looks as if they're all going to be on the same lap as each other. And we're going to watch Adrian Suttle in the final few laps, deservedly so. Just a few more corners to go, just 1 more sector to go actually. And here's turn number 12. It's caught out very few people compared to some of the other corners, particularly turn 11 and turn number 4. And briefly, Ricciardo's gained a position over Nick Heidfeld somewhere, but concentrate on this because out of the final corner to take a brilliant victory, his second of the season, is Adrian Suttle in the Force India. And taking second, his second podium finish in a row, is Fernando Alonso. Good result for him, but let down a little bit by his 3-stop strategy. And there goes Bianchi 12th and Glock 13th. These are the lap runners that are coming through. And there's another one, Matthias Lauda. But yes, Heidfeld has lost 6 position to Ricciardo, so I suspect Heidfeld's made another mistake somewhere on this final lap of the race. But there, 3rd place, another good drive for Rubens Barrichello, and he gets that deserved podium this time around. 3rd place for Rubinho. 4th for Christian Albers, not far ahead of Kobayashi, but once again, that's a good strategy for both of those 2 drivers actually. 6th for Ricciardo, he gets some points. Well done, Daniel. And De Rest is going to get some points as well, just behind Nick Heidfeld, which means that all drivers have scored points this season. And here's the remaining 2 drivers to go now. Here's Felipe Massa coming through in 9th place, supporting Super Guri's bid in the championship battle for 4th. And the final point scored by Sergio Perez. Well, what an eventful Hungarian Grand Prix that was. And one which sees the top 4 of the Drivers' Championship not scoring at all for one reason or another. 2 crashes for Webber and Raikkonen, a suspension failure for Button, and a puncture for Takuma Sato. And we'll be moving over, moving a little bit more west within Europe, heading to Italy for the first of 2 races there, and the first of which comes to you at Mugello for the Tuscan Grand Prix. So we shall see you for then.